Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of But Make It Books. I'm Niccara,
And I'm Brandon.
and we are so blessed and fortunate to start off like we always do. And we got to do what we got to do, which is checking in.
Yeah,
How are you?
exactly. I'm feeling, like you said, blessed. I'm feeling very, it's interesting because we're coming up on the new year ending. It feels like fall right now, so the season is starting to feel like what it is.
Yeah, you made fun of my ashy feet earlier. It's
I
cool. I
did.
lotioned them, so nobody came for me.
You're the one that said you started the fire, so
You're right, because they were ashy. Correct.
So that
Yeah,
happens, and then you healed with some lotion.
Look, these chickens ash and I'm lotion.
I'm lotion.
Okay.
Oh God, Mariah. And it's her season too. Mariah's
Yes, it
season.
is.
Here
She
we go.
defrosted.
Christmas Queen and defrosted this morning. I saw that video. No, all this to say, all those little things, I think, I'm starting to I've been really focusing and honing in on my gratitude meditations that I've been having at the beginning of every week and stuff. I know we growing, we healing, we doing better. And I don't know, I'm feeling it. Yeah. How about you? How are you?
Same. Practicing gratitude, trying to work out every day, at least for 15 minutes. But it's telling my age on myself, because my birthday was last Friday,
Ow.
and the Meganese ain't Meganing. It's very humbling.
Mm-hmm.
But we're here.
We are here for sure. But the thing is, Megan knees will always be Megan knees. They just change. That's all. That's cool.
Sure. Not the way these knees work. Okay.
Quite how that works. I love it.
We need some ice.
Yes, exactly. I'm also feeling this blessing thing because, as you know, we've been talking a little bit about how things are growing for the pod and things are getting better, and we're having opportunities that are hitting marks a lot sooner than we thought.
Amen.
Some of it is being able to curate opportunities to have conversation with some of like the dopest rappers. We were just talking about rap. About the dopest writers that are out there in the game right now. And I'm very excited about this conversation because, as you know, Black Buck is a book that I had to process. I had to digest because Darren was feeling too familiar. So I was like, wait a minute.
You.
He triggered me. It's all right. And I get to, go to the source today with you, and I'm excited about being able to have our discussion. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do our little intro for our guy. He creates work that aims to empower people of color to seize opportunities for advancement, no matter the obstacle. He was chosen as one of Entertainment Weekly's 10 rising stars to make waves in 2021 and was a 2018 Rhode Island Writers Colony writer in residence. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, Entrepreneur, Literary Hub, and elsewhere. His debut novel, Black Buck, was an instant New York Times bestseller and a Read with Jenna Today Show book club pick. He lives in Brooklyn. Stand up. Everybody help us welcome Mateo Askaripour. Mateo, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. As Brandon knows, Black Buck, I'm like low-key standing. I'm trying to keep my composure. But this was by far my favorite book of last year. I have preached the gospel of your book.
Wow, I am so honored, for real. And when Brandon hit me up with the possibility of this conversation, especially dealing with the theme and topic of healing, I said, this is one that I want to partake in. So to hear that, Brandon, you felt it so deeply, and that it felt almost too familiar, and Niccara, that you loved it that much, just means a lot to me. So it's an honor to be here with both of you.
No, thank you.
Thank you for sharing the space. Appreciate it for sure. So we're gonna kick off
how we do
with our snowball.
So Mateo, indigenous to Baltimore, New Orleans will say they got it too, but they don't. We have the snowball here.
Okay.
Which is, as maybe up north you call it an icy.
Snow cone?
But how we kind of break our ice.
Mm.
So, Brandon, Mateo, if you could go back, give advice to your former self when you were the most ambitious. You could be still now, but if you could go back, your most ambitious self, what would you say? Either Brandon or Mateo can start it off. I know that's a loaded question.
It is. I love that. Let's kick it off with that. I guess I'm incredibly ambitious right now. But I would dare say that's a healthier form of ambition, a healthier form of confidence than who I was those many years ago when I worked in a workplace, which was very similar to what's featured in the book. I was quite young, in my early 20s, managing a load of people and not yet truly privy to the meaning of power and what it can do to a person, and what a person can do with it, for better or worse. That was a time in my life when I was extremely ambitious, but I don't think that my head and heart were in alignment as much or as often as I would have liked them to be. So if I were to meet my younger self of that time, I would look him in the eyes and say, if something feels wrong, it probably is. And those thoughts that at times keep you up at night, the compromise of your moral compass for the sake of getting ahead and rising, you should investigate and inspect those questions and those feelings a bit further rather than sweeping them under the rug. Because if you do so, you might have a few less regrets. But at the same time, I hesitate to ever want to change the course of my personal history, because it has allowed me to arrive where I am today, in a place where I can write these books and hopefully have a positive impact, and be in a place where I can look at myself in the mirror and not flinch.
Brandon, how about you? I asked this question.
You did.
And now I'm like, dang.
Yeah. I would say chill out. Maybe. Because I'm thinking back to the things that I was ambitious over, and some of those things are just like not even an interest anymore, and some of those things were dependent on people, places, or things that are not in my life anymore, and it was just very driven by a sort of desire to make it that was very built on a media-based platform in a lot of ways. Like I watched a lot of content on TV and stuff like that, and then my imagination as a creative is already wild. So I was like, oh, I can create my life from a young age. I can like create how things go and how things will be, and it'll be that way, totally disregarding the fact that other people, other places, other things that have no knowledge of me have to be a part of that process as well. And like realizing what that means now is something that I realized I didn't have when I was younger, because I was just like, oh, I'll just do it, and I'll show up, and I'll be that guy, I'll make it happen, or we'll have fun and whatever. Right. So like my ambition was very doormatish once upon a time, because I was like, I want to do this, or I want to achieve this so bad that I will allow whatever.
Just want to do it. So for me, and it's just tough because I've worked in and still do in politics, and it's hard because as any Black woman shows up in any space, or any person of color honestly shows up in a space, when you are, unfortunately, like Darren, I think that's why it connected with me so much, when you turn into one of one, you do have that doormatish thing going on too. Like, I would just pray for the next thing instead of being in gratitude for the place and space that I actually am, and that I should applaud that. It was more so saying, you should be shooting for more. You should be doing more versus just being happy of where you are. And, ooh, I didn't even know this question was going to hit me.
Mateo said.
Now that I look back on my life, I wish I could go back to my younger self and just say, stop rushing. Be in gratitude for where you are and be happy for who you are, and that you have accomplished so many milestones right now.
Yeah.
And just thank the Lord, and maybe not rush it, and just be happy that you know how to do a thing so you can look for other goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof.
That's real. It's such like
I made that whole question. What is wrong with me?
No. It's a great one, and it's such a ambition and all of that is global, but I feel like it's almost a very specific American disease of more. And that a lot of us from young are taught that if you don't go get the hundreds of thousands or the milli, you're nothing and no one. If you don't have that title, you're nothing and no one. That the worst thing you can be is everyday and ordinary, So I get it. As much as I can, from my perspective, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to, if we're ready to go into the question
Let's go.
or whatever, I kind of want to jump into that part, because here we are in capitalistic America where everything is you need to have because you don't have. So because you don't have, you need to go get it and have as much of it, i.e. COVID hits, there's no toilet paper anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like people have a scarcity mindset that is alive and well and dormant. And so in my experience with Black Buck, the fact he's a salesman, and I always had a hard time processing, like, I inherently am always about people who do sales, because it's like, you're trying to tell me that I need to have the thing that I need to have, and you're trying to get me to believe that if I don't have your product or your thing, then I am without something. And so, I even in my most insecure self-esteem parts of me, I always recognize I had more than so many people or whatever. So how does the scarcity versus the abundant mindset, how did that kind of weave its way for you in the writing process of Black Buck? How did you come up with how you wanted to speak on capitalism in that regard, and how the system kind of relies on our cyclic not having, then having, then not having, and then having?
Yeah. That's a great question, and thank you for that, Brandon. As well as a bit of your own personal story related to scarcity and abundance. When I hear abundance now, there are words that I associate with certain writers or certain people. And when we hear abundance, right, you think that Black abundance that Kiese Layman is always talking about, and I think it's powerful. I think it's powerful as an idea, as a lifestyle, looking around us and seeing the bounty that we are surrounded by, rather than this prevailing narrative, again, that we're constantly being fed in this country, that we are not enough, that we don't have enough. You have people with 100 mil who say time to get it to 200, time to get it to 500. You got people who have a billy, time to get 2 billies, Jay-Z, what's better than one billionaire with the same hue as you, too? So it's like, for me, growing and living in this society, it just naturally and organically pervaded the pages of the narrative. We're swimming in it, whether we realize it or not. We're breathing it, we're sleeping it, we're eating, and we're doing everything else we need to do with it. And when it came to Black Buck, Darren was a character who wasn't initially feeding into that narrative. Darren was content working at Starbucks. He was content being a good leader, being a good son, a good partner, a good best friend, a good neighbor, we can say, in Bed-Stuy, in this neighborhood. And it's funny because after the book came out, a lot of people who live in the States like us would say, yeah, I never got it. Darren was valedictorian of his high school, yet he was at Starbucks. I didn't get it. And I said, what didn't you get? And this isn't me like trying to trap them or something, but I'm curious. When I speak with people about this book, I'm trying to excavate and learn from their experiences because I already know mine. So I say, what didn't you get about it? They're like, well, someone with all of these brains and this, that, and the other, why didn't he have a better job? Why wasn't he making more money or this, that, and the other? And for me, I love having those conversations because it sheds light on this same question of what is a good life. Is it a life when we're just making as much money as possible? Is it a life when we have the greatest perception of stature and power and influence? So I wanted to present the book in this way where we meet this young man who is academically smart. Because if you were to ask me, I think Jason knows more than Darren at the beginning of the book about life in many ways. Because he's like, yo, bro, don't get got. And Darren's like, what do you mean? That's not going to happen. and then we see what happens, right? But Darren is academically smart and gifted. And he's working at Starbucks. And I wanted many readers to feel this discrepancy in the situation. And I wanted them to probe that discrepancy of why do they feel that way? Why do they feel as though it's not enough? Because we see this sentiment echoed by Darren's mom, Ma, and Soraya in a bit. And it's them pushing this it's not exclusively, but very American notion of needing to do and be more in a crew that pushes Darren to pitch Rhett in that moment. And then to chase this very American, male, aggressive, oftentimes white definition of success to disastrous consequences. So yeah, Brandon, hopefully that answers your question. I mean, it was with me from beginning to end. And not to jump ahead, but by the end, I didn't want to just hand the reader answers to all of these questions. I wanted to create a certain level of ambiguity where the responsibility was on the reader to figure out what they think and feel about these questions and the different topics raised in the book.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think that goes back to my ice snowball. And that's what I clicked with, because I was like, dang, Darren was happy. He didn't need all this. And now look at him. Looking like a fool with his pants on the ground. Well, in jail, but so we talked about this before when we covered this book earlier in the pod. But Black Buck, the name, has many different entendres, which we have discussed before. In your own words, why name it Black Buck? Because to me, it has like 3 behind the scenes meanings for me. But I definitely want to give color to people who probably do not understand, I think, how complex you probably thought about it.
Yeah. I had this conversation a couple days ago in a place that is not in the States. I was in Sweden. And I was talking to someone about the title. Well, they more so asked me. They didn't know about the historical context. And they said, right, like Black Bucks, Black money, or maybe is it like something else? And I said, it is that, and it is other things at the same time. it is the notion of black buck, black money, literally. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for us to accrue money for ourselves, to better ourselves in right? And this hopefully doesn't stand in contradiction to what we were just talking about, because I think that that's a trap as well, right? To be like anti making money, to keep it real, or to do this or that, right? So it was discussing the concept of what is it like for us to accrue some of our own wealth, right? And I'm not talking about billions, even though, you know, some people got that, but I'm talking about wealth for ourselves, our families, and our communities, what that means, you know, right? We talk about Tulsa and these communities where the black dollar was circulated again and again and again before leaving the community, and what that means for us. So there was that concept. There was the fact that Darren is a young black man working at Starbucks, of course. Then, of course, there was the historical definition of a black buck, the enslaved male who was perceived by the white enslavers to be unruly, unable to be tamed, and who was feared to one day burn down the plantation, steal the animals, you know, steal the women, this, that, and the other. So when I thought about the confluence of those different concepts, I said, yes, this makes sense, because Darren is not burning down literally this workplace, but in a way he's burning down what it symbolizes, and what these institutions have come to symbolize for so many people. And I knew that there's a certain weight in the title. It wasn't me picking it to unintentionally provoke, because like Brandon, when you were talking about, some people, when they read this book, they're triggered. They say, I was Darren, or I was the only woman on an executive team in the 80s. And this triggered me back to those times. And for some people, it's healing, because they feel seen and they feel empowered, and they're like, okay, I'm not crazy. I wasn't bugging. And then other people are like, yo, you really brought me back to a traumatizing moment, and I had to put the book down for a minute. Or I had to put the book down, and I didn't really pick it back up. So this is all to say, yeah, there was a lot of thought put into the title. And it's funny because I can say this, you know, with confidence. I'm a generally good person to work with. I'm easygoing. I'm not a Devo, right? It's a team effort of dozens of people to bring a book into the world. But the question was raised to me at some point before the book came out. Hey, someone has an issue with the title. You know, can you tell us why you picked it? Someone's uncomfortable about the title. And that was a moment when they were about to see, you know, what it's like when I got to put my foot down a little bit. So I responded to that email with an essay with basically everything we just discussed. And they got back to me, said, cool, that's all we needed. Thank you. Keep it moving. But I wasn't going to publish this book with another name, in the same way that I wasn't going to change Starbucks. At one point, someone said, you might want to change Starbucks because you might get sued. And after discussing it with lawyers, right, I had to discuss different aspects of this book with lawyers. I realized I didn't have to change it. I wasn't about to change it to Fizz Bucks or like, you know, Comic Bucks or something like that. If anything, this is free publicity for Starbucks.
Right. You didn't talk about them bad.
Yeah. So that's the title.
And yet, like, no, he didn't talk about them bad. And yet it became right. Like, like just even hearing you in your, I feel like I got to take a walk. Like, I just feel like just hearing in your explanation, it's just, it's why this book is actually genius. The breaking of the buck and how the system will do that to you.
Literally. It's like so many things that are within Darren that are now in that title. He's black and he works at Starbucks. He's a black buck. He's making black bucks to take his family out of this situation, or to provide safety, and stability, and all those things. And so it just like, I said, oh, come on, Mateo, with the triple entendre.
Yeah, it was wild.
I really appreciate that. Because before the book came out, one of my homies, Lena, she's a part of the Rhode Island Writers Colony that you mentioned, Brandon, along with Jason Reynolds, who's the creative director. And Lena said, she's a poet, she's an educator, she's an incredible woman. She said, are you ready for the double read? I said, I think I know what you're talking about, but please tell me more. She said, well, Mateo, there's going to be people who read this book and say, I get it. This is me. I understand it. This is part of my world, and I feel affirmed and empowered. And not to say they'd automatically like rock with it or this, that, and the other, but that they would understand it and they would see the levels and the nuance, the complexity. And then she said, there will be another read where people only read it superficially and don't understand the layers and the depths and say, this is blah, 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 or say, oh, wow, this was so funny. Thank you for this funny read, Mateo. I loved it. Hilarious, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you know what? I am ready for the double read and I look forward to it. And I would hope that some of these people who don't understand the complexity or the thought that went into it, or just think that it's super funny, at some point down the line, will have a eureka moment where they're like, maybe that one part that I thought was super funny wasn't as funny as I thought it would be. But also at the end of the day, right? Like, we're a couple years removed from when the book came out. I've seen, 100 different opinions about the book, and understand that people are going to take away from it what they will. I can't control that. And it sounds sort of like a line, but I am more often than not just grateful, regardless of someone's reaction to the book, whether they loved it or they absolutely abhorred it, that they took the time to read it from beginning to end. But if someone, right, like, doesn't make it all the way to the end, to be honest, I might not respect that opinion as much.
Yeah,
I agree with that too.
So because we didn't had that conversation about finishing a book. And,
yeah, I don't believe in not finishing books.
It's interesting, but it. Okay, well, not to get into another conversation than that one, but it is okay. Here's the end way. I have a 2-part question on satire. One, based off of what you just said, and maybe it is the double read, but like, how do you make sure that satire, people realize that there are truths in every joke? How do we realize that this is a joke coming from somewhere? But then also to go into part 2 of the question, when the satire is so steeped in a specific culture's content, how do we make it transcend the joke into the commentary? This is a satirical approach to a real issue, and you're yucking, but you're not thinking.
Like, we laughing, but we not laughing about the same thing.
We're not laughing about the same thing, friend. And that's the part that there's the question. Go for it. I'm sorry. I'm telling you, like, I might need to take a minute, because the way this book this is why I had such a beautifully hard time digesting this book, because I was like, get out of my freaking face, Darren. Like, it was wild. It was wild. Yeah.
What a question. Wow.
Right.
Okay. So,
this is also as a guy who writes, like, I'm the jokester around here. I'm a jokester in my life. Like, I'm a straight up clown. I live my life on the cob. Like, that's me, right? So I love me a good satire of any kind. But I do, this is a common issue, specifically when people who are not in the space, whether it's a racial space, a gender space, a sexuality space, if they're not living that experience, and then someone in that space writes it a way that is entertaining if nothing else, everybody just focuses on the entertainment. And then that person's like, oh, you're so sharp, you're so intelligent, you're so amazing. Yeah, I'm also in pain, bruh.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Why you think Dave Chappelle left?
Ooh. So wow, we're going to a lot of different places right now. Let me try to wrap my head around, right? Because it's like, and I thought about this. I wrote about this once for some like British publication. And there is the thought of, are they laughing with us or at us? Right? And am I doing more harm with some of these jokes? But I'm gonna keep it all the way real. And I said this a bunch when the book came out, and there were people who were like, yeah, okay, yeah, I see that, I'm with it. Then there's other people who were like, yo, tone that down a bit, Malcolm X. And then there were other people who were like, you say that, but I don't know if like you actually mean it. But when I wrote this book, I was thinking about us. I wrote it for us, and us more specifically, who have been in these spaces, who have been the only one. Because there's been many Black folk who read this book and are like, yo, nice book, but I don't know if it's fully realistic, because if I was Darren, I would have caught a body. You know, Clyde would have been gone.
Cool, yeah.
Okay. All right.
His rent set up.
A lot of those, let's talk about it. A lot of those people have never been in these scenarios, though.
No.
They've never been in these scenarios, you know, and they don't know what it's like to be bewildered when you hear something. Raven Lalani talks about it in Luster, how racism can often be so mundane and innocuous that you're like, yo, did this even happen? These people haven't been in these scenarios where it's like the world starts fluttering at the edges of reality, and you're like, what is actually happening right now? And you're dumbfounded, and your tongue isn't loose, your tongue is stuck, it's static, and you're just like, what's happening right now? Is what I think happening actually happening? Because the way that they said this thing and the way that they looked could be in a way where they flip it on me, and then I'm gaslit, and it's just me who looks like me, or maybe 4 of us out of 400, and blah, 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 blah. You do this crazy calculus. You know, that Toni Morrison says how racism is such a distraction. Imagine if we didn't have to live with it, right? But this is the reality. So to answer your question, Brandon, I can't ensure what someone takes away. I can't ensure how someone digests the humor or the satire. I can't ensure how they do it. The only thing I can focus on and stay true to is my intention with it. Right. And I believe that with some of the best satire, and I remember pushing back on this book being labeled as satire. There are satirical elements, but the fact of the matter is that I could see a lot of this happening. I can see a lot of this happening, and all we need to do is Google, and you can see a lot of these types of things have already happened. But the fact is that while there are satirical elements, I find that some of the best satire does ride that line when you're like, wait a second, like, what is actually being said here? And I was cool with that. I was cool with potentially having my intentions misconstrued. It was a risk that I gladly took, because I hoped that when the focus was off me as the writer, someone will look to themselves and say, but what do I think? How do I feel about this? And again, the reads on this have run the gamut. There's a lot of people who say, this book got a lot of mixed reviews. You know, I don't know. This book got a lot of mixed reviews. Listen, I love it, because it's something that while the consensus more than the consensus has been positive, of course, right? If you go to Goodreads, you can check that. There's a lot more good than critical, but critical is also good. And I think that any book that makes people think, that makes people discuss, or beyond all of that, makes people feel, is doing as humbly as I can put it, is doing something, right? And is doing something meaningful. To your second question, Brandon, how do we ensure that the satire more or less is being put to good use and isn't being harmful? Again, I can't ensure that. I can only hope that the people who have been in these scenarios, whether they're skin folk or not, right? People have been in these scenarios. I've actually had mad like 60-plus-year-old white women email me and be like, hey, this is me. In some ways, like, I was sort of like Darren or whatever, right? But anyone who can relate, I would hope that they're able to pick their way through the dense jungle of satire and the jokes. And also for some of us who read this to find a certain level of like salve or balm in being able to laugh at the absurdity of a lot of situations, because that's what a lot of the satire is poking fun at, is just how absurd so much and so many of these acts are, and while they're also everyday and normal.
It's so funny. I was talking to Brandon about this because we were discussing how it is technically is labeled as a satire, but for me, it didn't feel satirical. I felt like I've been in situations even as obscene as paint being dumped. Now, that hasn't necessarily happened to me necessarily, but I have heard of it.
Yep.
I've heard it happen in other people, and just crazy things that have happened that are actually just based in reality. So I applaud you, because I definitely think it rises the line that people are like questioning themselves, like, is it me? And I have challenged some of my friends, even Brandon too. Is like, why are you triggered? Why is this happening to you? And is it because we haven't fully grasped or healed from the situations that we have been in similar places with Darren? Or have we been on the outskirts watching as this has happened to someone like Darren?
Yeah.
And then you have to reflect on yourself, and that's harder to draw a mirror on yourself than drawing a mirror on everybody else.
Always.
Yeah.
So I think about that a lot. But I would be remiss, as you are the GOAT, your new novel, The Great Atmosphere, is generating quite a bit of buzz.
Great Hemisphere.
Can you...
The Great Hemisphere.
I did say The Great Hemisphere, didn't I?
You said atmosphere.
Atmosphere. Why did I say that?
Because it is a great atmosphere. It is a great atmosphere.
You know I can't read. I can read, but I can't read.
This Great Hemisphere. Yeah.
Yes. This Great Hemisphere. Excuse me. Sorry.
No. See, someone actually said a different title one time in the past, and I'm like, damn, I knew this was too long.
It's not long. It's I can't read.
When the announcement came out, real quick behind the scenes, when the announcement came out, right, it first came out through Associated Press, and then it was picked up by like 200 different people. And it first said The Great Hemisphere. And when I saw that, I was emailing my editor like, yo, this says The Great Hemisphere. Like, how quick can they fix this? Blah, 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 blah. And they fixed it within 10 minutes. But I wonder if some people saw it beforehand, because a couple people were like, yo, I'm excited for The Great Hemisphere. And I was like, damn. Anyway.
That's not what I wanted.
No.
But we here.
Yeah, we here.
Can you give us a sneak peek about the story and what can we expect?
Yeah. There's a lot to, because I'm still in it right now. I'm still in it. I mean, the book is done, but we're still doing the necessary steps before it is like done. I'm not going to touch it again, never look at it. You know, we're in the proofreading phase and this, that, and the other. So I'm still in it. It's still raw. I'm still coming to terms with the fact that this book is going to come out, and that if I'm lucky, I'm going to be in more positions like this to discuss it.
Hey y'all, it's Niccara. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you like it, please make sure you review, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. Of course, sharing is caring, so make sure you share with your friends and let everyone know to come into Charm City Books to get our recommendation. And thank you so much for listening again, and I'll see y'all. Be good.